For years, websites have followed the same formula: flat, two-dimensional designs that, while functional, often feel static and uninspiring. But the web is evolving. 3D websites are here, transforming the way we experience the internet. They bring depth, movement, and interactivity, drawing users in and making every scroll and click feel immersive. But here's the challenge. When people hear 3D design, they often think of complex software, steep learning curves, and heavy coding. What if I told you that creating a stunning, fully interactive 3D website is easier than you think? No advanced coding, no complicated 3D modeling, just a simple, streamlined process that anyone can follow. In this step-by-step tutorial, I'll show you how to seamlessly integrate a 3D element into a real website using only HTML, CSS, and Spline, ensuring it's fully responsive and optimized for all devices. If you're a developer or know someone who would love this, share this video with them. And if you find this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating awesome content. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. To get started with this project, you'll need an image, which you can download directly from the GitHub repository. The link is in the description below. Just head over to the repository, and if you'd like to support the project, don't forget to give it a star. Once you're there, click on the image, and you'll see the option to download it. Now, once you have the file, open your code editor of choice and simply drag and drop the project folder into it. I'll be using Visual Studio Code, but feel free to use any editor you're comfortable with. Let's begin by setting up the necessary files. First, create an HTML file and a CSS file, as these will be the foundation of our project. Inside the HTML file, start by setting up a basic structure, including the necessary elements like the head and body sections. Then, make sure to link your CSS file inside the head section so that all the styles are applied correctly. Once everything is set up, open the project with Live Server to see the changes in real time as we build. All right, let's dive in and start adding some elements to our website. Inside the body tag, we'll be working to create a modern lighting gradient effect for the top right section of our project. First, we'll need an image element to display the gradient. Go ahead and add an img tag, then link it to the gradient image by setting the src attribute to point to this file. Below the image element, let's add a div with the class name layer blur. This will help us create a glowing effect around our gradient. With the HTML structure in place, we can move on to the styling. Open up your CSS file, and the first thing we'll do is remove any default margins and padding that browsers typically apply by default. Next, let's apply a more predictable box model by setting box sizing to border box, which ensures that padding and borders are included in the total width and height of elements. Now, let's focus on styling the body of the page. For the font family, we'll use Apple System Blink Mac System font, which gives us a clean, modern system font that's optimized for various devices. Next, let's set the background color of the body to black to create a dark, sleek canvas for the rest of the design. We'll also change the default text color to a light gray so it's easy to read against the dark background. For the layout, we'll set the min height to 100 VH, ensuring that the page takes up at least the full height of the viewport, no matter the content. And to improve the readability of the text, we'll set a default line height of 1.5. Now that we've set up the structure, let's move on to styling the gradient image. To target it in our CSS, we first need to give the image element a class. So head back to your HTML file and add the class name image gradient to the img element. Once we've done that, we can head to the CSS file and start styling. So we'll set its position to absolute. This allows us to precisely control where it sits on the page. Then we'll adjust the top and right properties to 0, ensuring it's aligned perfectly in the top right corner of the viewport. To make the gradient image blend nicely, we'll reduce its opacity to like 0.5, which gives it a more subtle layered effect. Finally, we need to make sure the gradient image stays behind all other elements on the page. Next, let's target the layer blur class. This is the element that will give us a glowing effect around the gradient. We'll set its height to 0 and width to 30 rem, so it remains invisible, but we can still apply some cool visual effects. Now we'll position it absolutely as well, so we can control its exact placement. Set the top property to 20 cent to position it a little lower on the page, and align it to the right with right 0. To create the glowing effect, we'll apply a box shadow that gives the div a soft blurred glow. Next, let's apply a slight tilt by adding a 30-degree rotation using the rotate property. This gives the effect a bit of angle and depth. Finally, just like the gradient image, we'll set the z-index of this layer blur element to -1. With these styles applied, we now have a sleek gradient background with a glowing blur effect to give the page a modern, dynamic feel. Now let's move on to creating our navbar section. Head over to the HTML file, and we'll start by adding a div with the class name container. This will act as a wrapper to keep everything neatly structured. Inside this container, we'll create a header element, which will hold our navigation elements. First, let's build the logo. Add an h1 inside the header and give it a class name of logo. Right below that, we'll create a nav element, which will contain 4 anchor tags. These will be our navigation links labeled company, features, resources, and docs, making it easy for users to explore different sections of the website. To complete the navigation, we'll also add a sign-in button and give it the class name btn sign-in, which will allow users to log in quickly. Now that our structure is in place, let's jump into the CSS to style our navbar. First, we'll target the container class and set its width to 100%. To keep it centered, we'll apply a margin of 0 for the top and bottom, and set the left and right margins to auto. We'll also give it a relative position and set overflow to hidden, ensuring no content spills out unintentionally. Next, let's style the header itself. We'll set its display to flex to align elements horizontally, use justify content space between to push the logo and navigation links to opposite ends, and set align items center to keep everything vertically aligned. For spacing, we'll apply 1 rem of padding on the top and bottom, and 5 rem on the left and right, ensuring good separation from other sections. For the logo, we'll remove its default margin, increase the font size to 3 rem, and set its font weight to 300 for a sleek, lightweight feel. Now, moving on to the navigation menu, we'll set the nav element to display flex, align the items in the center, and create some breathing room by adding a gap of 3 rem between links. To slightly nudge the navigation closer to the logo, we'll apply a negative left margin of -5%. Since the navbar should stay above other elements, we'll give it a z-index of 999. Actually, let's apply this to the entire header to ensure all its contents remain on top. For the anchor tags inside the nav, we'll style them with a font size of 1 rem, slightly increase readability with a letter spacing of 0.1 rem, and apply a smooth transition for an elegant hover effect. We'll also remove the text decoration by setting it to none, ensuring clean, minimal links, and make sure the text color inherits from the body for consistency. To add interactivity, we'll create a hover effect so that when users hover over the links, the text color subtly changes to gray, enhancing the user experience. Now let's focus on the sign-in button. We'll give it a light gray background, set the text color to black, and apply a padding of 0.8 rem on the top and bottom, and 2 rem on the left and right, making it feel more balanced. To achieve a soft, modern look, we'll give it border radius 50px and remove the default border. The font size will be set to 1 rem with a font weight of 500, keeping the text bold but not overwhelming. We'll also add a transition effect on the background color and set cursor pointer to indicate it's clickable. Finally, for the hover effect, we'll make the background color shift to gray when hovered over, providing a subtle but effective visual response. And that wraps up our header section. Now let's move back to the HTML file and continue building our layout. Inside the container element, right below the header, we're going to create a new div with the class name content. This section will hold the core elements of our hero area and set the foundation for a visually engaging design. Inside this content div, we'll start by adding another div with the class name tag box. This element will handle the border gradient effect. Within the tag box, we'll create a div with the class name tag, which will contain the introductory text introducing, followed by a character reference for a web bar shape to enhance its styling. Right below the tag box, we'll add an H1 heading with the text email for us, followed by a break element to start a new line, and then the word developer. Next, we'll create a paragraph element with the class name description. This will serve as a short introduction to the platform, giving users a quick overview of what the website is about. Moving further down, we'll add another div with the class name buttons. Inside this, we'll place two anchor tags, which will act as interactive buttons, one for the Get Started action and the other for the main sign-in process. These buttons will improve navigation and enhance the user experience. Finally, to keep our structure organized and semantic, we'll wrap the entire content div inside a main element. This ensures better accessibility and clarity in our code. With that, our content section is fully structured. Now let's switch over to the CSS file and style these elements to bring everything to life. In the CSS file, let's begin by styling the main element to create a structured and visually balanced layout. Set its display to flex to enable flexible positioning of its child elements, and define the flex direction as column to stack elements vertically. To ensure proper alignment, set justify content to center, allowing the content to be perfectly centered within the section. Finally, for a responsive height that adapts dynamically, use min height calc 90vh beta 6 rem, ensuring the section takes up most of the viewport while accounting for spacing and layout balance. Let's move on to styling the content section to ensure a clean and modern look. First, target the .content class and set its max width to 40 rem, ensuring it remains structured within a defined space. Adjust its positioning with a margin left of 10%, giving it some offset from the edge for a balanced layout. To make sure it appears above other elements, assign it a z-index of 999. Now let's focus on the .tag box, which will create a stylish animated gradient effect. Set its position to relative and define its width as 18 rem and height as 2.5 rem. To give it a sleek, rounded appearance, apply a border radius of 50px. For the background, use a linear gradient that transitions smoothly from right to left, ensuring the first and last colors match for a seamless loop. Double the background size to 200% to enable a smooth animation effect. Now, define an animation named gradient animation, running infinitely over 2.5 seconds with a linear transition. Lastly, add a soft box shadow to enhance the depth. To bring this animation to life, define the @keyframes for gradient animation, gradually shifting the background position to 200%, creating a dynamic movement. Next, style the tag itself. Set its position to absolute and use the inset property to keep it 3px away from the edges. Give it a black background and maintain the 50px border radius for a rounded look. Set it to display, flex, then use align center and justify content center to perfectly center its content both vertically and horizontally. For smooth interactions, add a 0.5's ease transition. When hovered over, the text color changes to purple, adding a subtle yet modern touch. And don't forget to set the cursor to pointer to indicate interactivity. Now let's refine the heading H1 inside the content section. Increase its font size to 4 rem and set the font weight to 600 show, making it bold and prominent. Add a letter spacing of 0.1 em for better readability. Apply a 2 rem margin on the top and bottom while keeping the left and right margins at 0. Set a line height of 1.2 for proper spacing between lines, and apply a soft box shadow to subtly elevate the text. Moving on to the description class, set the font size to 1.2 rem, keeping it readable and elegant. Add letter spacing of 0.05 em and limit its width with a max width of 35 rem to prevent it from stretching too wide. Finally, change its text color to gray for a softer contrast against the dark background. Now, let's style the .buttons class, which holds 2 interactive buttons. Set it to display flex and add a 1 rem gap between the buttons for proper spacing. For the Get Started button, .btn Get Started button, first remove its text underline, then apply a 1px solid border using a subtle hexadecimal color. Set its padding to 0.7 rem for top bottom and 1.2 rem for left right, ensuring a comfortable button size. Add a sharp border radius of 50px for a smooth, rounded appearance. Use a font size of 1.2 rem, set the font weight to 600 and apply letter spacing of 0.1 em to enhance readability. For the hover effect, change the background color to a lighter black shade, making it visually engaging. To make the transition smoother, add a background transition effect. Before moving on to the next button, let's add a margin top of 3 rem to the buttons class to create proper spacing and improve the layout. The Sign In button, .btn-signin, follows a similar styling approach. Follow these steps carefully to get it just right. However, for the hover effect, adjust the background color to gray, creating a distinct contrast when interacted with. Now, the real fun begins. We're about to integrate a 3D robot model into our website, and you'll see just how easy and exciting it is to bring this interactive element to life. There are many incredible tools available for adding 3D elements to websites, but today we're going to use one of the most powerful and user-friendly tools out there, meet Spline. Spline is a browser-based 3D design tool that allows you to create, animate, and even add interactivity to 3D objects without needing complex software. In this tutorial, I'll walk you through the entire process of adding a 3D element to your project, step by step, so you can see exactly how it works. However, if you want to explore Spline in more depth, there are plenty of fantastic tutorials available online to help you master even more advanced features. To get started with Spline, the first thing you'll need to do is sign up for an account. Once you're in, head over to the sidebar and click on Community. Here, you'll find a ton of amazing 3D elements that other users have created. You can open any of these projects and use the Remix option to modify and customize the 3D elements however you like, then use them in your own projects. For today's tutorial, we're going to work with a cute robot created by Victor. When you open the project, don't forget to like and comment on it to show your appreciation for his awesome work. Once you click on the project, you should see this screen where you can start remixing and modifying the 3D element. Here, you can add or remove elements, create different creative shapes, add text, circles, cubes, and a variety of materials. You also have the ability to change the camera view, add different lighting effects, and even create animations. For example, this robot we're using actually follows your cursor. However, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this part for now. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to use Spline, drop a comment below. But like I said, there are already so many great resources out there that explain it in detail. For our project, I've already prepared 3D robot, and I've provided the link to it in the description box. Just head over there, click on the link, and you should see this page. Now that we have our 3D model, the next step is to figure out how to actually add it to our website. Don't worry. This process is super simple, and I'll walk you through it step by step. Let's dive in. First, click on the Remix button and wait for the page to load. Once it's ready, click on the Play button to preview the model and see how it behaves. Now head over to the Export panel, where you'll find different options to embed and share your 3D design. From here, select the Public URL option and open the Play Settings panel. In this section, you'll see customization options like removing the Spline logo, but since that's a premium feature and we're using the free version, the logo will remain visible. No worries about that. What we can do, however, is tweak other settings. With the free version, you can still hide the background, enable or disable interactions like panning and zooming, and adjust various other display settings. Once you've made your selections, update your public URL. Next, navigate back to the Overview section and select the Viewer option. After waiting a few seconds, you'll see an embed code. Go ahead and copy it. Now switch over to your code editor, open your HTML file, and paste this code inside the body tag below all other elements. At this point, if you open your project in the browser, you should see the 3D robot displayed on your web page. But what exactly is happening here? When you export and embed code from Spline, it typically consists of two key elements. The Spline Viewer element. This is a custom HTML element provided by Spline that embeds and displays the 3D model inside your web page. It usually includes attributes like URL, which links to your Spline project, and additional options such as touch action or interaction controls, which let you adjust how users interact with the 3D model. And the script element. This script is responsible for loading the Spline Viewer library, ensuring that your 3D model renders correctly and remains interactive on your website. Without this script, the Spline Viewer element won't function properly. And that's it. With just a few simple steps, we've successfully integrated a 3D model into our website. Now it's time to fix the position of our 3D model. First, take the Spline Viewer element and place it inside the container div, then give it a class name of robot-3D. Next, switch over to your CSS file and target this class. Set its position to absolute and position it at the top 0. To slightly hide the Spline logo, move it further to the right by setting right 20%. And just like that, our website is looking great. The next step is to make it fully responsive for both tablets and mobile devices. Let's start with tablet optimization. Typically, tablets have a width of less than 1300 pixels, so we'll use a media query to adjust some elements for better display. First, target the header and change its padding to 1 rem for top and bottom and 0.5 rem for left and right. Next, adjust the content class by setting its margin top to 85% to push it further down. Lastly, for the Robot 3D class, scale it down to 0.8, move it up by maybe 20 cent, and shift it slightly to the right by 2%. Now let's make it mobile friendly. Using another media query for devices with a width of less than 768 pixels, we'll tweak several elements step by step to ensure everything looks perfect on smaller screens. Apply the following styles with precision. And that's it. Great job. Now that our website is fully responsive across all devices, the final touch is to add smooth animations to enhance the user experience. To achieve this, we'll be using the AOS Animate on Scroll library, which will allow us to apply beautiful reload animations with minimal effort. Let's move on and set it up. Open your browser and search for aos.com on Google. Once you're on the website, you'll see plenty of amazing scroll animation examples. To use them, you'll need to access the AOS library. To do this, head to the GitHub logo in the top right corner of the website and click on it. This will take you to the GitHub repository for AOS. Scroll down the page until you find the Basic Setup section. Copy the code provided there and paste it into the head section of your HTML file. Then copy the script code and paste it into the body section of your HTML file, just below all the other codes. Now the library is ready to use. We'll start with a fade down animation for the H1 element inside the header. Simply copy the AOS code for fade down and add it to the H1 tag. To make the animation smoother, define a duration of 1500 milliseconds. Now, if you reload the project page, you should see the animation in action. Next, let's apply the same animation to all anchor tags inside the nav bar, but this time increase the duration by 500 milliseconds for a nice cascading effect. And don't forget to add it to the sign-in button as well. Now let's animate the content section and the 3D robot model. Scroll down on the AOS website until you find the section with different animation settings. Look for the fade zoom in effect. Copy its code and apply it to the tag box inside the content section with a duration of 1500 milliseconds. Then, copy and paste the same effect for the H1 element, but increase the duration for a smoother transition. Do the same for the paragraph inside the content section, setting the duration to 2500 milliseconds, and finally apply it to the buttons, again increasing the duration slightly for a better flow. Let's check the results. Reload the page and everything should animate beautifully. Oh, looks like I made a little typo in the duration for the paragraph element. Let's correct that real quick. Finally, let's apply the same fade zoom in animation to the spline viewer element, so our robot gets a smooth reload effect when the page refreshes. And that's it for the reload animations. But there's just one small issue. The hover effects on the elements inside the header are not working. That's because we set a z-index of 999 on the header. The fix is simple. Instead of applying the z-index to the entire header, we should assign it specifically to the anchor tags inside the nav bar and the sign-in button. This should solve the problem. If you followed along and completed this project, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any suggestions on how I can improve the content quality, feel free to share them. Also, if you ran into any issues, drop a comment and I'll do my best to help. I'll be back soon with another exciting project. Stay tuned and take care.